This video is to draw connections between Chapter 20 in Ways of the World and the excerpts from BBC 4 on the Belgian Congo, or what becomes the Belgian Congo. So the chapter is divided into three sections. The first section deals with how Europeans developed political or governmental control in the new colonies that they established, especially after 1875. But throughout the 19th century. The middle section deals with issues of labor and how labor basically was supplied to run these colonies. And the final section deals with the way European colonizers attempted to shape the minds and opinions of the people they were colonizing. And we can see linkages between the BBC 4 excerpts and all three of these parts, plus a few extras that I'll attend to at the end of this discussion, basically. So if we turn to control, political control, we can see a couple of overlaps. The technological side of European control isn't emphasized as much in the BBC 4 excerpts, so we don't hear about machine guns and industrial prowess too much, really. Instead, I think these excerpts deal with political control at the level of ideas. So Leopold portrays the Congolese as in need of civilizing and portrays himself as the person who is more than willing to provide this civilizing. He also links the fate of Belgium to this project, stating that countries that don't attempt to conquer other societies and thereby advance themselves are, in a sense, doomed to be failed societies. So clearly he's buying into a number of the ideas discussed in Ways of the World in that first section of Chapter 20, which note that the colonizers tried to separate themselves from the people they were colonizing, tried to put themselves in terms of classification at the top of the pecking order in the classification schemes that they used to organize and talk about their colonizing efforts and so forth. So I think there's a lot of overlap there. We can also see Leopold willing to use the positive sides of the European ideologies of colonization from the 19th century, particularly liberalism. He was perfectly willing to note that he was trying to get rid of the Arab slavers in what was going to become the Congo Free State in order to free the Congolese from slavery, and we know that that really wasn't what he was trying to do. In addition, in the Royal Museum of Central Africa, Leopold absolutely portrays the civilizing mission that the Belgians are engaging in to benefit the Congolese. So these are a couple of ways in which that first section of the chapter clearly comes into play within the BBC 4 videos. In terms of the middle section, I think here's the clearest overlap. The Congo Free State, which is what Leopold called his colony once it was established officially, and that's its years of establishment are 1885 to 1908. The Congo Free State was basically a state that used coerced labor, and we saw that in the excerpts quite clearly. A paramilitary force, La Force Publique, was established in 1885, and it was used to force villages to produce quotas once rubber became the main commodity that was demanded, quotas of rubber, basically, and villages that didn't produce were burnt to the ground, or individuals were mutilated or beaten with a particular sort of whip called the chicot. So clearly this is a case of forced labor as opposed to wage labor or the use of market incentives, which were also used by European colonizers, although not by King Leopold. In terms of the last section, the attempt to shape the minds of the Congolese, there's some of that also in evidence in this video. A lot of that evidence of trying to shape opinion is really more focused on Europe, but if you can recall the one excerpt where the Congolese, the historian from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, is interviewing some of his fellow citizens about King Leopold. One of these citizens calls Leopold a civilizer. So some people were convinced that that was what Leopold was doing, or were convinced at some point that this was the case. How many were convinced at the time of the Congo Free State is another matter. Nevertheless, I think there's a linkage to be seen there. There are two things I think the videos from BBC4 talk about that are maybe a little bit outside the scope of the chapter, and I'll close by talking about those a bit. One is the memorialization of Leopold. That, I'd say, does relate in some ways to attempts both to create political control and to shape the minds of the colonized. But it's, I think, a more distant connection, and there I'm thinking about Leopold's efforts to shape opinion using museums, but also using monuments to Belgium, and also the attempt to create a pleasure palace in Ostende, also to honor Belgium in a sense. These are ways in which Leopold clearly was trying to shape his reputation as a great man, if not necessarily directly there as a great colonizer. What's interesting about those two efforts, though, is that they try to deny the source of the money for these projects, which was the Congo. So that's one thing that I think is not, maybe, is only tangentially connected to Chapter 20. The other big theme, which I think I want to close with because it's real crucial, is the legal steps that Leopold goes through. In 1876, he calls a geographic conference of basically experts in colonial science to convince them that he's basically a great humanitarian and he wants to undertake an ideal colonial project in what will become the Congo Free State. He forms an association, the International Africa Association, which is a charity, and he then recruits Henry Morton Stanley, who in 1876 is making his way across what will become Leopold's colony. So 1877, he recruits him essentially once he's reached his destination. Even as he recruits Stanley, he's planning to change the status of the organization, the International Africa Association, to a private holding company controlled basically by him. And he makes the final move that creates the Congo Free State, a diplomatically recognized but privately owned colony, in 1884, where he uses various promises and diplomatic smoke, essentially, to convince heads of state and diplomats across Europe at the Berlin Conference of 1884 that it would be a good idea to allow him to have this colony on the terms that he would like it. So I hope this video is helpful in making connections between the BBC4 excerpts and the textbook.